He had been walking the same streets for years, but today everything seemed different. The air felt heavier, and every step he took seemed louder than usual. He could feel his anger bubbling inside, the kind that was hard to control. It wasn't something new. He had carried it for months, maybe years, though it had been sleeping quietly until now. Today, though, it woke up and demanded attention. He had reasons for this anger, reasons that had nothing to do with the world around him, or maybe everything. Life had not been kind. He had struggled with people who judged him, places that made him feel invisible, and moments that chipped away at his confidence. Each insult, each slight, each misunderstanding had piled up inside him like rocks, heavy and sharp. And somewhere along the way, the anger found a face. As he walked, he saw her. She wasn't doing anything wrong, nothing that warranted his feelings, yet she became the target. He could not explain why. Her presence, her calm walk, her quiet confidence, it stirred something bitter within him. His heart raced, his chest tightened, and before he could think clearly, the anger took over. He wanted to release it, even if just a little, even if it meant a moment of madness. He clenched his fists without realizing it. His breathing became uneven, shallow, and quick. The world around him seemed to blur. The buildings, the people, even the sounds of traffic melted into the background. All he could see was her, and the anger inside him screamed for release. He had told himself many times that he would not let it control him, that he would rise above, but the words felt hollow now. They could not stop what was coming next. When he reached her, the first thought that crossed his mind was regret. But it was too late. The body that moved before his mind could intervene was not his rational self. It was the anger itself embodied in the motion of his arm, the force behind it, the suddenness that made the world gasp. He hit her. The sound of contact was sharp, like a crack that split the air. The impact sent a shock through him and a ripple through her, and everything seemed to stop. For a moment there was silence, a silence that screamed louder than any noise. He froze, his mind blank, his heart hammering as if trying to escape the cage of his chest. The reality of what he had done began to sink in. He had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The calm anger he had felt moments ago had transformed into panic, into fear. He had no plan for this, no excuse, no way to fix it. She stumbled slightly, more from surprise than from the force, and looked at him. Her eyes were wide, shocked yet controlled. There was no immediate anger, no screaming, only a quiet assessment that cut him deeper than any insult could. He saw the disbelief in her eyes, and for a fraction of a second, he wished he could take it all back. But the moment was gone. The action had been taken, and consequences were already forming around them like storm clouds. He did not stay to see what would happen next. His feet carried him away before his mind could process the aftermath. Every step was heavy with guilt, with fear, with a kind of shame that clung to him like wet clothes. The city seemed different now, streets twisting and turning in ways that reflected the chaos inside him. He had acted out of anger, and now he could not undo it. The freedom he sought in releasing the rage had vanished, leaving only a hollow pit of dread. As he ran, he thought about what had led him here. Each memory was a small sting. The times he had been underestimated at work, the times he had been ignored by people he trusted, the moments when kindness was replaced by mockery. Each one had contributed to this moment, though none justified it. The anger had accumulated silently, patiently, until it found a vessel, and that vessel was his own hand moving before he had a chance to reason. He ducked into an alley, trying to calm himself. His chest heaved, sweat ran down his back, and his hands shook. The adrenaline was fading, leaving room for fear. He knew that what he had done could have serious consequences. Legal trouble, public shame, ruined relationships, all of it loomed in his mind like shadows in the fading light. He had acted out of hate, out of a moment he could barely control, and now he faced the consequences he had never prepared for. He thought of her again, her face, her calm eyes that had held a question he could not answer. Why had she not screamed? Why had she not hit back? Perhaps she was strong. Perhaps she had learned how to control situations he could not. The thought made his heart ache. He realized that anger alone could not solve problems, that it often made them worse. Yet he also knew that realizing this now did not change what had happened. Time passed, but he remained restless. He wandered through streets he had known all his life, but everything felt alien. Every passerby seemed to watch him. Every car horn seemed like judgment. He could not escape the weight of his actions. He replayed the moment over and over, analyzing it, wishing for a different outcome. But the past was immovable, and the future uncertain. Finally, he found a quiet bench in a small park, far from the chaos of the streets. He sat down, letting his body relax slightly, though his mind refused to do the same. He thought about what he could do next, about whether he should apologize, confess, hide, or run. Each option carried risks he had never faced. He had acted rashly, and now he was trapped in the consequences of a single moment of anger. As he sat, he realized something important. This incident, terrible as it was, could become a turning point. He could allow it to consume him, or he could learn from it, though learning would not be easy. He had to face the reality of his emotions, of the rage he carried, and of the ways he let it control him. Only then could he hope to move forward. Night fell and the streets emptied, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The city lights flickered on, casting long shadows, reminding him that even in darkness there was light. He understood that he could not undo the past, but he could influence what came next. The woman he had hit was out there somewhere, living her life, unaware of how much impact their brief encounter had on him. The thought made him feel small yet strangely hopeful. There was a chance for redemption, if only he chose to take it. He stayed on the bench for hours, reflecting, understanding, and preparing. He knew that the days ahead would be difficult. He did not know how the woman would react if they met again, or what consequences awaited him. Yet in that moment he made a silent promise to himself. He would confront his anger, face the outcomes of his actions, and find a way to make amends. It would not be easy, but it was necessary. As the first light of morning touched the city, he rose from the bench. His body was tired, but his mind was clearer. He had survived the night of panic and shame, and now he had to survive the day and every day after until he could find a way to heal both himself and, somehow, the damage he had caused. He walked slowly, deliberately, understanding that life had handed him a lesson in the harshest way possible, but one that he could not ignore, and somewhere deep inside, he hoped that redemption was not just a dream, but a real possibility. The days after that incident felt heavy for him. Every morning he woke with a knot in his stomach, thinking about what he had done. He had tried to push it out of his mind, to continue his life as if nothing had happened, but it was impossible. The memory of her eyes, calm yet piercing, haunted him. He could not forget the feeling of shock on her face or the sudden silence that followed the strike. It replayed in his mind with every passing second, reminding him that he had crossed a line he could never take back. He knew he needed a fresh start. His life had been stagnating, and the event, as terrible as it was, forced him to confront the truth. He had to make a change. He decided to apply for a new job, hoping that a new environment could give him a chance to rebuild himself. It was not about escaping his guilt. It was about finding a place where he could focus on being better, where the mistakes of the past would not follow him too closely. After sending out several applications, he received a call from a company he had admired from afar. They were offering a position that matched his skills perfectly, and he felt a cautious spark of hope. On the day of his interview, he tried to calm himself, reminding himself that this was a chance to show who he really was. He dressed neatly, combed his hair, and practiced polite smiles in the mirror. Yet deep down, a part of him still trembled, unsure of what awaited. He entered the building and was greeted by the receptionist, who led him to a waiting area. He sat down, heart pounding, trying to control the anxious thoughts that threatened to overwhelm him. He glanced around, noticing the people moving with purpose, the clean lines of the office, and the quiet hum of computers. For a brief moment it felt peaceful, like stepping into a different world, a world where he could start over. Then she walked in. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. There she was, standing tall and composed, her presence commanding attention even in the quiet room. His breath caught, and for a moment the world seemed to slow down. He could not believe it, could not process what he was seeing. The woman he had hit out of blind anger was now the person in charge, the one responsible for evaluating him in this new opportunity. He froze, caught between panic and disbelief. How could this be happening? He wanted to turn and run, to escape the inevitable confrontation that loomed over him. Yet he could not move, could not tear his eyes away from her. She looked at him, her expression calm but serious, and in that instant he knew she recognized him. The realization hit him harder than any physical pain ever could. He had thought the incident was behind him, that it was a fleeting moment, but it was not. It was alive, staring back at him with unyielding clarity. The interview began and he struggled to focus. His mind was a whirlwind of regret, fear, and uncertainty. Each question she asked felt loaded with meaning, as if she could see through him, through his every thought, every misstep. He stumbled over answers that would have been easy under normal circumstances, and he felt his confidence slip away. Yet he tried to maintain a semblance of professionalism, forcing himself to answer with clarity and composure. She noticed the tension in him, the slight hesitation, the nervous movements that betrayed his attempt at calm. She did not comment immediately, but her eyes held a question, a silent inquiry that made him feel exposed. He realized that she was not only intelligent but also perceptive. She could read people, understand their motives, and detect the hidden turmoil that most tried to mask. And now, he was the one who could not hide anything. As the interview progressed, he found himself thinking of all the mistakes he had made, not just the one that had brought them together, but countless others that had shaped him into someone he barely recognized. He had been reckless with his anger, careless with his words, and blind to the consequences of his actions. The interview became more than a test of skills. It became a reflection of his own character, his own growth, and his capacity to face the truth. By the end of the session, he was exhausted, mentally and emotionally. She thanked him politely, her voice steady and professional, and he felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Relief because it was over, and apprehension because he had no idea what would happen next. Would she remember the incident? Would she act on it, report it, or confront him? The uncertainty was suffocating, yet he knew he could not avoid it forever. Over the next few days, he tried to focus on other things, on preparing for the next step, on imagining a future where he could redeem himself through hard work and dedication. Yet, every thought returned to her, to the moment he had lost control, to the chance encounter that had changed the trajectory of his life. He realized that life had a way of confronting him with the consequences of his actions, whether he was ready or not. When he received the call offering him the position, he was both elated and terrified. He wanted the job desperately, not just for the career opportunity, but for the chance to prove to himself that he could be better. Yet, accepting meant working closely with the woman he had wronged, facing the reality of his actions every day. It was a test far greater than any interview question, a challenge that required not just skill but courage and honesty. On his first day, he walked into the office with a heavy heart, trying to prepare himself for the inevitable interaction. He tried to keep his head down, to focus on tasks, to avoid drawing attention to himself. Yet he knew that he could not hide from her, that their paths would cross sooner rather than later, and when they did, he had no idea what to say, how to act, or how to face the past without collapsing under the weight of guilt. She greeted him with a calm professionalism that both comforted and unnerved him. She spoke clearly, assigning tasks and introducing him to the team, but he noticed the subtle looks she gave him, the way her eyes seemed to measure and assess. He could feel her intelligence and awareness like a presence in the room, a constant reminder that she knew more than she let on. Every interaction became a careful navigation, a test of patience, respect, and self-control. As the days passed, he began to understand the woman better, to see her not just as the person he had harmed but as a leader, someone with a clear vision and strong principles. He respected her professionalism, her ability to remain composed under pressure, and her capacity to treat everyone fairly. Yet the memory of his actions lingered, making every moment of success bittersweet, tinged with shame and the desire to make amends. He realized that working under her supervision was not just a professional challenge, but a personal one. He had to confront his own flaws, his anger, his impulsiveness, and learn to channel his energy into constructive actions. Each day at the office became a lesson in humility, in patience, and in the quiet strength required to face the consequences of one's past. He learned to observe, to listen, and to act with thoughtfulness, understanding that his growth depended on more than just completing tasks. It depended on becoming a better person. Slowly, he began to regain some confidence, though it was tempered by the awareness of his past mistakes. He found ways to contribute meaningfully, to show initiative, and to demonstrate reliability. Each small success was a step toward redemption, a way to prove to himself that he could rise above the incident that had once defined him. Yet the memory of that day lingered, a constant reminder that actions have consequences, and that personal growth often comes from facing uncomfortable truths. He watched her in meetings, in conversations, and in moments of decision-making, noticing the care with which she treated her team. She was firm but fair, demanding but understanding, and he began to see the qualities that had made her someone he had once judged wrongly. Respect grew slowly, quietly, as he realized that her strength was not something to fear but something to learn from, something that could guide him in becoming a more thoughtful, disciplined, and empathetic person. By the end of the first week, he understood that this job was more than just work. It was a mirror, reflecting both his flaws and his potential. He had been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild not just his career but his character. The woman he had once hurt was not only a supervisor but a teacher of sorts, showing him the power of patience, professionalism, and inner strength. And though fear and guilt still lingered, he knew that he could no longer run from them. Facing them was the only way forward. The weeks that followed were a test of endurance and humility. Each interaction with her required thoughtfulness. Each task demanded focus, and each day offered lessons in restraint, empathy, and understanding. He began to see that life had a way of challenging him, of presenting opportunities for growth in the most unexpected forms. The woman he had once hurt became an unwitting guide in his journey toward becoming someone he could respect, someone he could be proud of. Through it all, he carried the memory of that day like a shadow, a reminder that anger can be destructive and that every action carries weight. Yet he also carried hope, a quiet belief that redemption was possible if he remained committed to learning, to growth, and to making amends in the ways he could. And as he moved forward, navigating the complexities of his new role, he began to understand that life's most difficult lessons often come from its most unexpected encounters, shaping not only careers but the very essence of who we are. He had thought that starting the new job would help him forget the past, but the reality was far more complicated. Each day brought reminders of what he had done and the face of the woman he had wronged. He wanted to avoid thinking about it, but it was impossible. Her presence, her calm authority, and her intelligence were constant, silent reminders of the moment he had lost control. He could not ignore it, and he realized that he must face the truth about himself if he wanted to move forward. He began to pay more attention to himself, observing his emotions, his reactions, and the ways he had allowed anger to control him. The office became a mirror, reflecting not just his work ethic but his character. He noticed the small changes he had to make, like taking a breath before responding, thinking before acting, and finding patience where he had none. Every interaction with colleagues, every meeting, and every task became a test of self-control and reflection. The woman he had hit seemed aware of the tension he carried. She treated him professionally, giving him assignments and evaluating his performance, but there was a subtle awareness in her eyes, a knowing that he could not ignore. He tried to be normal, to act as if nothing had happened, but the effort was exhausting. Every conversation, every glance seemed to carry weight. He wondered if she remembered the incident clearly, if she was judging him, or if she had forgiven him quietly without words. He realized that part of his anxiety came from fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of judgment, and fear of not being able to make things right. He had always avoided facing his mistakes directly, hoping they would fade over time, but now the mistakes were in front of him every day, forcing him to confront not only what he had done but who he had been. It was uncomfortable and humbling, but it was necessary. Work itself became both a distraction and a challenge. He had skills that were valuable, but he needed to prove himself beyond those skills. His actions, demeanor, and reliability were being watched, and he knew that he had to earn trust, not assume it. This required focus, dedication, and consistency, qualities he had sometimes neglected in the past. Each completed task, each contribution to a project, became a small step toward rebuilding both his professional reputation and his sense of self-worth. At times, he struggled. Mistakes were inevitable, and moments of impatience or frustration still crept in. When they did, he felt a surge of guilt, as if each error was a reflection of his past failures. He realized that personal growth was not linear. It required patience, self-compassion, and the courage to continue even when he faltered. He could not undo the past, but he could shape the present and future by learning from each misstep. Interactions with the woman he had hurt became a delicate balance. He had to be respectful, professional and attentive without seeming insincere or overly nervous. She in turn remained composed and fair, acknowledging his efforts while maintaining her authority. The dynamic between them was complex, filled with unspoken understanding, cautious observation, and subtle lessons in behavior and integrity. He began to see her not just as a boss but as a model for how to handle challenges and conflicts with dignity. One day, a significant project arose that required collaboration between them. They had to discuss strategies, assign tasks, and coordinate with the team. He felt the tension acutely, worried that she would see him as incapable or reckless. Yet he pushed through, focusing on the work itself rather than his fear. The process was demanding, requiring attention to detail, clear communication, and mutual respect. By the end, he felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had contributed meaningfully, and she had acknowledged it professionally, without any trace of condescension. Through these moments, he began to understand the deeper lessons. Anger and impulsive reactions could destroy opportunities and relationships, but awareness, reflection, and effort could build them. He realized that he had the power to choose his responses, to act thoughtfully, and to control emotions that once dictated his behavior. The office became a place of personal development as much as professional activity. Outside of work, he reflected on his progress and setbacks. He journaled, thought deeply, and tried to process emotions that had been buried for years. He faced memories he had avoided, considered the reasons behind his anger, and sought ways to channel it constructively. The incident with the woman had been a catalyst, forcing him to confront parts of himself he had long ignored. It was painful, but the pain carried wisdom and opportunity for growth. He also began to observe her more carefully, not with fear but with respect and curiosity. He noticed how she treated her team with fairness, how she listened before judging, and how she navigated challenges with clarity and composure. He learned from her example, seeing how strength could coexist with empathy and authority could coexist with patience. These observations influenced his own behavior, helping him navigate difficult situations more calmly and thoughtfully. Despite these improvements, the shadow of the past remained. There were moments when guilt surged unexpectedly, triggered by a memory, a glance, or a simple reflection. He accepted these feelings as part of the process, understanding that they were reminders of where he had been and the distance he still needed to travel. He did not let guilt paralyze him, but used it as a guide to remain vigilant, humble, and committed to growth. Relationships with colleagues also offered lessons. Working closely with others required communication, empathy, and the ability to listen. He had often struggled with these skills before, letting impatience or pride interfere. Now he made a conscious effort to collaborate, to support others, and to contribute without seeking recognition. Each positive interaction reinforced the value of respect and consideration, principles he had once overlooked. He faced a turning point when a minor conflict arose within the team. A misunderstanding threatened to escalate, and he had to intervene. Drawing on lessons learned from observing his boss and reflecting on his own past mistakes, he handled the situation carefully, mediating between colleagues with calm and fairness. The conflict was resolved without further tension, and he realized that he had grown in ways he had not anticipated. He could manage emotions, guide interactions, and contribute to harmony, skills that had once seemed impossible for him. The woman he had wronged continued to guide him indirectly through her leadership. She provided constructive feedback, encouraged initiative, and maintained clear expectations. He respected her deeply, not only for her authority but for her capacity to balance firmness with understanding. She did not ignore his past, but treated him as a professional, allowing him the opportunity to demonstrate growth. This balance of accountability and support was something he had never experienced before, and it became a model for how he wanted to interact with others. Over time, he noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt more confident, not in arrogance but in self-assurance. He approached tasks with clarity, handled challenges with composure, and interacted with colleagues with empathy. He still carried the weight of the incident, but it no longer defined him. Instead, it served as a reminder of the lessons learned, the importance of self-awareness, and the necessity of growth. He began to see that life offered second chances in unexpected ways. The opportunity to work under the woman he had hurt was a chance for redemption, not through words alone but through consistent action and integrity. Each day became a test of character, requiring him to apply lessons from both personal reflection and observation of her example. He understood that redemption was not instantaneous but a continuous journey, built through effort, humility, and conscious choice. He also learned patience in ways he had never imagined. Change did not come quickly, and setbacks were inevitable. Moments of frustration, doubt, and fear surfaced, but he learned to navigate them without reverting to old habits. The process was slow, sometimes painful, but it was real, and it brought a sense of authenticity to his growth. He realized that true change required not just desire but persistence, reflection, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Interactions with the woman remained a central focus, though their dynamic evolved subtly. Professionalism remained, but there was an unspoken understanding that developed over time. He could sense her recognition of his efforts, her awareness of his growth, and her ability to guide without overbearing control. These experiences taught him that relationships, whether professional or personal, could be shaped by integrity, respect, and consistent action. He began to dream cautiously about the future, imagining himself as someone who could contribute meaningfully, maintain self-control, and earn trust. The past incident was still present, but it no longer paralyzed him. Instead, it motivated him to remain vigilant, thoughtful, and committed to becoming a better person. He understood that life did not erase mistakes, but offered opportunities to learn, to grow, and to transform. Through these experiences, he discovered a sense of purpose. Work was no longer just about earning a living. It was about becoming someone he could respect, someone capable of facing challenges with integrity, and someone who could learn from past failures. The lessons he had gained were profound, extending beyond the office into every aspect of his life. He realized that personal growth was intertwined with professional development, and that both required reflection, effort, and accountability. As months passed, he began to feel a quiet confidence. He had not forgotten the past, nor had he forgiven himself entirely, but he had learned to navigate the present with awareness and care. Each day offered the chance to demonstrate growth, to act thoughtfully, and to contribute positively. The woman he had wronged remained a guiding presence, not through direct intervention but through example and the standards she set. He understood that redemption was earned gradually, through action, reflection, and consistent effort. By the end of the period, he had transformed in subtle but significant ways. He was more patient, more empathetic, and more self-aware. He had learned to manage emotions, communicate effectively, and contribute meaningfully. The incident that had once filled him with shame had become a catalyst for growth, teaching him lessons about anger, responsibility, and the power of second chances. He realized that life's most difficult moments often carried the greatest opportunities for transformation, and he embraced the journey with cautious hope and determination. He had spent months trying to prove to himself that he could control his anger, act responsibly, and rebuild his life. Each day was a challenge, each interaction a small test of his growth, but deep inside, he carried a quiet fear that he would never truly be free from the memory of what he had done. The incident with the woman he had hurt was a shadow over his life, a reminder of a moment when he had lost control and the consequences that followed. Then, one afternoon, it happened. She called him into her office. His heart raced and 1,000 thoughts surged through his mind. Had she discovered something he had not shared? Was she going to confront him about a mistake he had not yet made? He walked slowly toward her office, each step heavy with anticipation and anxiety. The door loomed ahead, a barrier between him and the truth he had been avoiding. When he entered, she looked up from her desk. Her expression was calm, professional, but there was a hint of something more, an awareness that made his stomach twist. He closed the door behind him and stood before her, unsure of what to say, how to act, or how to face the woman whose eyes had once held shock and disbelief. She motioned for him to sit, and he obeyed, heart hammering in his chest. She spoke first, her voice steady but measured. She told him that she knew about the incident that had happened months ago. She described it calmly, without anger or accusation, outlining the facts and her perspective. For the first time he felt exposed, laid bare before someone who had every reason to judge him harshly. But she did not judge. She explained her disappointment, her surprise, and her expectations for professional behavior, but she did so in a way that focused on understanding and accountability rather than condemnation. He listened, unable to speak at first. The weight of guilt pressed down on him, and he realized that there was no way to hide, no way to avoid the truth. She was not seeking revenge or humiliation. She was seeking honesty and reflection. This realization was both terrifying and liberating. For the first time, he understood that facing the consequences of his actions required courage, sincerity, and the willingness to admit his mistakes fully. Finally, he spoke. His voice was shaky, but the words came from deep within. He apologized sincerely, acknowledging the harm he had caused and the fear and shock she had experienced. He admitted his anger, his lack of control, and his regret for letting those emotions dictate his actions. He did not make excuses or try to justify himself. He simply owned the truth and offered a genuine apology. She listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. There was a pause, a moment of silence that seemed to stretch indefinitely. Then she spoke again, explaining that while the incident had been serious, she could see evidence of his growth and commitment to change. She acknowledged his efforts over the past months, the way he had conducted himself professionally, and the ways he had demonstrated responsibility, patience, and maturity. Her words were a revelation. He had feared confrontation, punishment, and rejection, but instead he found understanding, guidance, and an opportunity for reconciliation. He realized that she was not only a supervisor but also someone who could see beyond a single moment of failure, someone who understood that people were capable of change. This understanding gave him a sense of hope and a renewed determination to continue on the path of growth. They discussed how to move forward, establishing clear expectations and boundaries. She emphasized the importance of continued professionalism, accountability, and self-reflection, while also acknowledging his progress. The conversation was difficult, but it was constructive, providing him with a roadmap for personal and professional development. He left her office with a sense of relief, clarity, and a renewed commitment to be the person he aspired to become. In the days that followed, he reflected on the conversation constantly. He realized that confrontation, when approached with honesty and respect, could be transformative. He had feared the worst, expecting anger or punishment, but instead he found guidance and the possibility of redemption. This experience reshaped his understanding of responsibility, communication, and the importance of facing challenges directly rather than avoiding them. His interactions with her at work changed subtly. There was a quiet acknowledgement, a mutual understanding that went beyond words. He could sense her confidence in his ability to act responsibly, and he felt a deep respect for her professionalism, wisdom, and strength. Their relationship became less about fear and guilt and more about guidance, learning, and mutual respect. He realized that true growth required not just personal reflection, but also the willingness to be guided and challenged by others. As he continued to work under her supervision, he applied the lessons he had learned. He approached tasks with greater focus, communicated more clearly, and acted with intention. He observed not only her actions but also the ways she treated others, noting her fairness, patience, and ability to maintain authority without intimidation. He began to emulate these qualities in his own interactions, striving to balance professionalism with empathy and authority with understanding. He also noticed subtle changes within himself. The fear that had once dominated his thoughts began to fade, replaced by confidence grounded in responsibility and self-awareness. He could face challenges without panic, navigate difficult situations with composure, and interact with colleagues without anxiety or doubt. He realized that the incident that had once filled him with shame had become a catalyst for profound personal growth, teaching him lessons that extended far beyond the office. Yet, he remained humble. He knew that growth was ongoing, that setbacks were inevitable, and that vigilance was necessary to maintain control over his emotions. He accepted that the path to redemption was continuous, requiring constant reflection, effort, and accountability. Each day offered new challenges and opportunities to apply the lessons he had learned, and he approached them with a sense of purpose, awareness, and determination. The woman he had once harmed became a quiet mentor in this journey, not through direct instruction but through example, expectation, and the guidance she provided. He respected her deeply, not only for her role as a supervisor but for her insight, strength, and the way she balanced fairness with accountability. Through her leadership, he learned the value of integrity, the power of reflection, and the importance of maintaining professionalism even under difficult circumstances. Over time, he began to see the broader implications of his growth. He realized that personal transformation required facing one's mistakes, accepting responsibility, and actively working to become a better person. He understood that anger, impulsiveness, and fear could be destructive, but awareness, reflection, and consistent effort could lead to meaningful change. He also recognized that the people around him, particularly those who held authority, could play a significant role in guiding that growth, providing feedback, and offering opportunities for redemption. He continued to work diligently, applying the lessons he had learned not only to his professional life, but also to his personal interactions. He communicated more thoughtfully, listened with attention, and acted with consideration. He understood that the way he treated others reflected not just his skills but his character, and he was determined to demonstrate growth, integrity, and respect in every interaction. As months passed, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had faced his past, confronted the woman he had harmed, and demonstrated his commitment to change through consistent action. He had learned to manage emotions, navigate complex relationships, and contribute meaningfully to his work and team. The incident that had once seemed like a source of shame had become a powerful catalyst for personal development, teaching him lessons that would guide him for years to come. He realized that redemption was not an event but a process, built through reflection, effort, and accountability. He understood that facing one's mistakes, seeking guidance, and committing to growth were essential components of becoming a better person. The experience had reshaped his understanding of responsibility, trust in the power of personal transformation, and he approached each day with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Through this journey, he also developed a deeper empathy for others. He recognized the challenges people face in managing emotions, navigating relationships, and learning from mistakes. He became more patient, compassionate, and understanding, applying these qualities in his interactions with colleagues, friends, and family. The lessons he had learned extended far beyond the office, shaping his character and guiding his choices in every aspect of life. By the end of this period, he felt a profound sense of growth. He had faced the woman he had once harmed, navigated the challenges of working under her supervision, and applied the lessons learned to his personal and professional life. He understood that mistakes could not be erased, but they could serve as powerful catalysts for transformation, guiding him toward a more thoughtful, responsible, and empathetic approach to life. The journey had been difficult, but it had been real, meaningful, and deeply transformative, shaping him into a person capable of integrity, self-awareness, and genuine growth. Time passed, and he began to notice a profound shift in himself. The fear and guilt that had once dominated his thoughts were still there, but they had softened into something more manageable. He could now think of the incident with clarity, as a painful lesson rather than a defining moment. Each day at work reinforced the growth he had experienced, and he began to see that redemption was not a one-time event, but a continuous journey shaped by actions, awareness, and accountability. He approached every task with renewed focus and dedication. His work became not just a means to earn a living, but a way to prove to himself that he could be disciplined, responsible, and reliable. He found satisfaction in completing projects efficiently and supporting his colleagues. Small successes built his confidence, and he learned to celebrate progress, however minor, as a reflection of his commitment to improvement. The woman he had once hit remained a central figure in his journey, though the dynamic had transformed. She continued to maintain high expectations, but her leadership now felt supportive rather than intimidating. He noticed that she observed him carefully, not to catch him making mistakes, but to understand how he applied lessons he had learned. Her presence became both a challenge and a guide, encouraging him to refine his skills and demonstrate integrity consistently. He also paid attention to the interactions between her and the rest of the team. He saw how she balanced fairness with authority, how she guided without controlling, and how she listened while making firm decisions. These observations inspired him to adopt similar approaches in his own interactions, both at work and in his personal life. He understood that true leadership required empathy, patience, and the ability to navigate challenges with thoughtfulness. Outside of work, he focused on personal reflection and growth. He journaled his experiences, explored the sources of his anger, and considered how past events had shaped his reactions. He sought to understand himself more deeply, recognizing patterns of impulsiveness and pride that had led to mistakes. By confronting these aspects of himself, he gradually developed emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and the capacity to make more deliberate choices in difficult situations. He also began to rebuild relationships that had been strained or neglected. Family and friends noticed subtle changes in his behavior. He was more patient, attentive, and considerate. He listened actively, spoke thoughtfully, and approached conflicts with a desire for understanding rather than immediate reaction. The skills he developed at work translated into his personal life, strengthening connections and fostering trust. One day, a challenging project required him to take initiative and lead a small team. He applied the lessons he had learned from the woman he had once hurt, balancing authority with collaboration. He delegated tasks thoughtfully, communicated clearly, and provided support when needed. The project was successful, and he felt a quiet pride in his ability to lead responsibly. This experience reinforced his understanding that personal growth and professional capability were deeply intertwined. He continued to interact with the woman regularly, and their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect. He no longer approached her with fear or hesitation, but with confidence tempered by humility. She acknowledged his efforts and growth, subtly, through professional guidance and constructive feedback. He realized that she had played a crucial role in his journey, not by forgiving him outright, but by setting expectations and allowing him to demonstrate accountability. Throughout this period, he faced moments of doubt and struggle. Old habits and emotional triggers occasionally resurfaced, challenging his self-control. Yet each time, he reminded himself of the progress he had made and the lessons he had learned. He used these moments as opportunities for reflection, analyzing why he had reacted impulsively and how he could respond differently in the future. These experiences strengthened his resilience and deepened his commitment to continuous improvement. As he grew, he also observed how others in the office managed challenges. He learned to appreciate diverse approaches to problem-solving, collaboration, and communication. He adopted strategies that complemented his strengths and addressed his weaknesses. By integrating these lessons, he became not only more effective professionally, but also more self-aware and adaptive in social and personal contexts. His confidence and competence began to gain recognition from colleagues. While he never sought praise or validation, he noticed that others respected his work ethic, reliability, and thoughtful approach. This recognition reinforced the sense of purpose he had cultivated, providing additional motivation to maintain high standards and demonstrate integrity consistently. The incident that had once seemed catastrophic gradually became a reference point for his growth. He remembered the fear, guilt, and shame he had felt, but he now framed those emotions as catalysts for change. He understood that mistakes were inevitable, but growth required acknowledgement, reflection, and deliberate action. By internalizing this perspective, he developed a more balanced approach to challenges, allowing him to navigate both professional and personal situations with composure. Over time, he also developed a deeper empathy for others. He recognized that everyone faced struggles, made mistakes, and sought understanding. This empathy influenced his interactions, enabling him to offer support, patience, and guidance when appropriate. He learned to listen without judgment, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to appreciate the perspectives of others, even when they differed from his own. His relationship with the woman continued to be professional, but there was a subtle acknowledgement of the journey he had undertaken. He respected her not only as a supervisor, but as someone who had provided guidance through her expectations and leadership style. He understood that her role in his growth was not about forgiveness alone, but about creating an environment in which he could demonstrate accountability, learn from experience, and practice integrity consistently. As the months passed, he reflected on the broader lessons of his journey. He realized that anger and impulsiveness could have destructive consequences, but self-awareness, reflection, and consistent effort could lead to meaningful transformation. He understood that personal growth required humility, patience, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. The journey had been challenging, but it had provided him with insights, resilience, and a stronger sense of purpose. He also began to mentor newer colleagues, sharing lessons learned from his experiences without revealing the specifics of his past mistakes. He emphasized the importance of self-control, reflection, and accountability, guiding others through challenges with empathy and clarity. This mentorship reinforced his own growth, reminding him of the responsibility he had to act with integrity and support others in their journeys. Through continued effort, reflection, and guidance, he became a reliable, thoughtful, and respected member of the team. He handled challenges with composure, communicated effectively, and contributed meaningfully to projects. His growth was evident, not only in his work, but in his interactions, relationships, and the confidence with which he navigated daily life. The experience with the woman who had once been the focus of his anger remained a pivotal moment in his life. It taught him that actions have consequences, that accountability is essential, and that growth requires facing one's mistakes directly. The incident became a reference point, a reminder of the power of reflection, honesty, and deliberate action in shaping the person he aspired to become. By the end of this journey, he understood that redemption was not about erasing the past, but about transforming the present and future through consistent effort and integrity. He recognized that personal growth required awareness, humility, and the courage to confront challenges head-on. The lessons he had learned guided his decisions, interactions, and approach to life, shaping him into a more thoughtful, responsible, and empathetic person. He could finally view his past mistakes with clarity, acknowledging their impact while focusing on the steps he could take to be better. The fear, guilt, and shame that had once dominated his thoughts had transformed into motivation, awareness, and a commitment to continuous improvement. He had learned to navigate challenges, manage emotions, and build trust, both professionally and personally. Through perseverance, reflection, and the guidance of those around him, he had achieved a level of personal growth that seemed impossible at the beginning of his journey. The woman he had once harmed played a crucial role, not through forgiveness alone, but through creating a space for accountability, expectation, and demonstration of integrity. He understood that personal transformation was a lifelong process, built on deliberate action, self-awareness, and the courage to confront both successes and failures. As he moved forward, he embraced the lessons of his past, the growth of his present, and the possibilities of his future. He approached life with a renewed sense of purpose, integrity, and empathy, committed to maintaining the progress he had achieved and continuing to learn from every experience. The journey had been difficult, painful, and transformative, but it had shaped him into someone capable of reflection, accountability, and genuine personal growth, ready to navigate life with awareness, compassion, and resilience.